You know what I said earlier when the Berlin Wall came down and everyone realized that large centralized bureaucratic agencies are not the best solution to our problems? That still is true. And that sometimes when you actually have freedom and the ability of decentralizing decisions, you come up with better decisions in the long term. What I fear is taking place with this administration in dealing with education is that Common Core is being used as a hook to try and get everyone involved in decisions that will be controlled and directed from the Department of Education back in Washington, D.C., a large centralized bureaucratic administration. That's the biggest fear I want to. What Utah does as far as its own curriculum development should be Utah's decision. And as long as Utah has the flexibility of doing what Utah wants to it, and when I go back in the classroom, as long as I have the flexibility to do what I actually want to do, then you've got a system that has the chance of actually expanding and becoming innovative and creative. If we move into areas in which you give greater control over that process to Washington and greater control to a federal Department of Education, then you are inviting problems down the line. I think we've seen that in the past with other programs that have come out of Washington that simply invite the federal government to do a good classic bait and switch with the states. That's a fear that I do have, and I think it's a fear that you should take literally and to take seriously and look very carefully about how you're moving in that particular direction. The one thing that can actually move education forward is allowing people to be creative enough to come up with new ideas and think outside the box. That doesn't come with a directive that comes down from Washington, and that's the biggest fear I have as you go forward with this program. Once again, what you do what you want to do. You were the biggest leader in the fight against No Child Left Behind, which was another effort of the federal government to try and dictate what would happen at the state level. It's the wrong approach. I don't want us to do something that's even worse. I want us to make sure that we're looking philosophically about where we're going in the future. And I say that as an old teacher that wants freedom more than anything else when I'm in the classroom.
Congressman, I wanted to do a follow-up on the last question that was asked you. Is it my understanding that you're telling me that the administration is tying money to Adopt Core in all of the local school districts? That's not the message that I'm getting from the school districts who adopted it.
Yes.
Would you explain?
Now, it simply is one of the hooks that they want. They're trying to get you to buy into this. Now, if you just bought into Common Core on your own and didn't use anything the federal government is giving you, i.e. buying out of No Child Left Behind in exchange for this, then you give them no hook that they can use you in the future. But if you actually go through their program in which you buy into their waiver of No Child Left Behind, which, by the way, he doesn't have the power to give you in the first place, if you bought into that as well as adopting Common Core, then you've given them the hook that they can use in the future. And yeah, there's a concern. You should be concerned about it.
Whereas the Common Core state standards are a set of academic standards promoted and supported by two private membership organizations, the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers, as a method for conforming American students to uniform, one size fits all, achievement goals to make them more competitive in a global marketplace.
And whereas the National Governors Association and the Council of the Chief State School Officers received tens of millions of dollars from the private third parties to advocate for and develop the Common Core State Standards strategy, subsequently creating the Common Core State Standards through the process that is not subject to any Freedom of Information Acts or other sunshine laws, and never piloted the Common Core State Standards.
And whereas, even though federal law prohibits the federalizing of curriculum, the Obama administration accepted the Common Core State Standards Plan and used 2009 stimulus bill money to reward the states that were most committed to the president's Common Core State Standards agenda. But they failed to give states, their legislatures, and their citizens time to evaluate the Common Core State Standards before having to commit to them.
And whereas the National Governors Association and Council of Chief State School Officers, in concert with the same corporations developing the Common Core State Standards assessments, have created new textbooks, digital media, and other teaching materials aligned to the standards, which must be purchased and adopted by local school districts in order that students may effectively compete on Common Core State Standards assessments.
And whereas the Common Core State Standards program includes federally funded testing and the collection and sharing of massive amounts of personal student and teacher data.
Whereas the Common Core State Standards effectively removes educational choice and competition, since all schools and all districts must use Common Core assessments based on the Common Core standards to allow all students to advance in the school system and to advance to higher educational pursuits.
Therefore, be it resolved, the Republican National Committee, as stated in the 2012 Republican Party platform, does not believe in a one-size-fits-all approach to education and supports providing broad education choices to parents and children at the state and local level, which is best based on a free market approach to education for students to achieve individual excellence.
And be it further resolved, the Republican National Committee recognizes the Common Core State Standards for what it is, an inappropriate overreach to standardize and control the education of our children so they will conform to a preconceived normal.
And be it further resolved that the Republican National Committee rejects the collection of personal student data for any non-educational purpose without the prior written consent of an adult student or a child student's parent, and that it rejects the sharing of such personal data without the prior written consent of an adult student or a child student's parent with any person or entity other than schools or education agencies within the state.
And be it finally resolved that the 2012 Republican Party platform specifically states the need to repeal the numerous federal regulations which interfere with state and local controls of public schools, and therefore the Republican National Committee rejects this Common Core State Standards plan which creates and fits the country with a nationwide straitjacket on academic freedoms and achievements, as adopted by the Republican National Committee on April 12, 2013.
It is better to be divided by truth than to be united in error. It is better to speak the truth that hurts and heals than falsehood that comforts and then kills. Let me tell you something, friend. It is not love and it is not friendship if we fail to declare the whole counsel of God. It is better to be hated for telling the truth than to be loved for telling a lie. It is impossible to find anyone in the Bible who was a power for God, who did not have enemies, and who was not hated. It's better to stand alone with the truth than to be wrong with a multitude. It is better to ultimately succeed with the truth than to temporarily succeed with a lie. There is only one gospel, and Paul said, "If any man preach any other gospel unto you, than that which we have preached unto you, let him be accursed."